Books that were almost never published. Part 1. Side note, I am creating this series because I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I was fed this story that if I just worked hard enough and created something that was good enough, that ultimately the world would recognize the value in whatever it is that I made. But it turns out that is actually not the case, and that sometimes the world is cruel and uncaring. And just because no one else recognizes the value in your artwork does not mean that you and your artwork are not inherently valuable. Sometimes it just means you need to be a little bit more persistent and maybe be willing to shove it down the world's throat. Just a little. And that's okay. Now, back to this. This is John Kennedy Toole, who at the age of 31 decided that he was no longer interested in participating in this version of reality. He had spent most of his 20s writing a novel that when he finished garnered some interest, but he was never able to successfully get published. After he took his own life, all of his belongings, including a smeared carbon copy of this manuscript, were left to his mother. She, being a grieving mother, decided to make it her life's mission to get her son's work published. And she tried for over a decade to get anyone to read it. And no one would, at least not until she met this man. Walker Percy, a writer and professor at Loyola University in New Orleans. You see, John's mother had repeatedly called his office and then eventually showed up with a copy of the manuscript asking him to please read it, and Walker Percy reluctantly agreed. He later admitted that he only took it because he felt bad for a grieving mother and had planned on only reading a page or two just to assuage his own guilt. But once he took it home and started, he realized it might be good. And then after a while, he realized it might actually be brilliant. Long story short, A Confederacy of Dunces was finally published in 1980, and John Kennedy Toole was posthumously awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1981. It's considered a classic of Southern American literature. And on a personal note, this is the first audiobook I ever listened to, and it is so funny. I was in tears. And I consider it one of the great tragedies that he was never around to witness just how many people have read and adore this masterpiece. Because sometimes you can create something brilliant and it just takes the world a little bit of time to catch up to that fact. Thank you for listening.